Mr. Patel, as you and the President continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
You want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing
Veracity?
perjury. Tell the American
You didn't
people how
know.
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You did
Have the audacity to actually put the
all right,
facts
then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel where we refuse to be silenced, where we expose corruption, fight for the Constitution, and speak boldly for the values that made this country great. If you're new here and you're tired of watching the left lie their way through every institution in America, do yourself a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're not here to play politics. We're here to reclaim the truth. Today we need to talk about what just happened in the House hearing where Kash Patel, former Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense and author of Government Gangsters, stood before Congress and was relentlessly attacked by Democrat Representative Madeleine Dean. Now let me be absolutely clear. This wasn't an honest inquiry. This wasn't about oversight. This was an attempted public character assassination by a radical leftist who has made a career out of defending a weaponized government. This was about trying to take down someone who's been exposing their corruption from inside.
Thank you, Mr. Patel, for your testimony and for being here today. I've been looking at the President's 120-word FBI budget request, the so-called skinny, I'll call it Ozempic request, that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities. The weaponization of the FBI that is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the President sees it, on what the President calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The President calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the President to go after the President's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the President is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the President's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious, in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the President continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
You want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times, and you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing
Veracity?
perjury. Tell the American
didn't
people how
know.
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You
Have the audacity to actually
No,
put the
all
facts
right, then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the
failing, not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Dean opened by reading off cherry-picked quotes from Patel's book, accusing him of creating an enemies list. She deliberately used this loaded term to suggest that Patel and President Trump are going after political opponents. What she refuses to admit is that the real list is filled with bureaucrats and deep state operatives who violated their oath to the Constitution. They weren't targeted because they disagreed politically. They were called out because they abused their positions to go after American citizens, silence dissent, and sabotage a sitting president. That's not paranoia. That's documented. She even tried to tie Patel's book to Trump's broader political strategy by claiming that it's being used as a blueprint for revenge. She said that out loud. A member of Congress is upset that a book about restoring justice in government is being treated as a guide. Isn't that the point? Isn't the job of Congress, of the executive branch, of the DOJ, of the FBI, to serve justice, not protect political allies? What's worse is that Dean couldn't stop herself from fear-mongering. She referenced an arrest in Wisconsin where a judge was taken in by the FBI after allegedly interfering with IC operations by demanding a judicial warrant. Dean called it an example of locking up judges like we live in some authoritarian state. But what she conveniently left out is that if the judge obstructed lawful federal immigration enforcement, then accountability is not just appropriate, it's necessary. No one is above the law, including activist judges. But it gets more absurd. Dean went on to accuse Patel of committing perjury during his Senate confirmation process, suggesting that he lied under oath about his involvement in January 6th related firings and his connections to media personalities. And what was her big bombshell? That he appeared on a controversial podcast 8 times. That's it. No crime, no collusion, just guilt by association, something the left has become disturbingly good at weaponizing. Patel fired back in one of the most powerful moments of the hearing. When Dean mockingly asked when she, a former impeachment manager, could expect the FBI at her door, Patel answered, "You want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me." He's not wrong. The man's career has been dragged through the mud simply for standing up against the DC machine. He was investigated, harassed, lied about, all because he helped uncover corruption in the Russia hoax and refused to bend the knee to the intelligence community. But perhaps the most revealing part of this hearing came when Dean tried to pin him down on a funding discrepancy. She pointed out that Patel was asking for over $1 billion more than what President Trump included in his budget request. It was a gotcha moment meant to suggest division between Patel and Trump. But once again, it failed. Patel calmly explained that he would do what he's always done: stand up for the Constitution, defend the nation, and make sure the FBI is not weaponized against the people. That's what leadership looks like. That's what service looks like. What Madeleine Dean did during this hearing was not oversight. It was projection. The Democrats are terrified. They're terrified of what happens when patriots like Patel speak out. They're terrified of what happens when the truth is no longer buried. And they're terrified that the American people are waking up to the abuse of power that has become standard operating procedure for the radical left. Let's remember something. The same people who claim Patel is politicizing the FBI are the ones who actually used the FBI to spy on Trump's campaign. The same people crying about enemies lists are the ones who built blacklists, banned conservatives from social media, and destroyed the lives of whistleblowers who told the truth. They want to act like they're the victims of a political witch hunt, but in reality, they are the architects of the biggest political witch hunt in modern American history. Kash Patel is not the problem. The problem is a corrupt system that rewards loyalty to the party over loyalty to the Constitution. The problem is a media that parrots Democratic talking points and ignores facts. The problem is people like Madeleine Dean who use their platform not to serve the people, but to smear the patriots who actually do. That's why we need to stand with Kash Patel. We need to stand with the men and women who have the courage to expose corruption, to challenge power, and to fight back. Because if we don't, if we let the left continue to rewrite the narrative unchallenged, we'll lose this country not with a bang, but with a whimper. So here's what I ask of you. If you believe in truth, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe that the FBI should be defending Americans, not targeting them, then, like this video, subscribe to America First and share this message far and wide. The fight isn't over. It's only just begun. And to the swamp in Washington, if you think you can scare us into silence, think again. America first. Always.